Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Rabia Mahmood and welcome back to lecture number 14. Today in our class we are going to discuss William Shakespeare and the history of English language. William Shakespeare, you would be amazed to know that why are we discussing him in the class of history of English language. Although all of us know that William Shakespeare is a literary man, he is one of the best writers of the world, one of the best playwrights and dramatists of Elizabethan era. And then why are we discussing him in the history of English language? There are many reasons, there are many contributions that Shakespeare has made in the history of English language. Firstly, I'll be giving you a brief introduction to William Shakespeare, and then we'll be moving on to discussing different relevant facts that would add up towards the development and the rise of English language. Shakespeare, if we discuss any thing about Shakespeare, so there is one thing that our discussion would always be loaded with the superlatives. Because he is actually he is a person who has got the most of everything. He was the best writer, he was the best playwright, the best dramatist. We always use the third superlative degree, the superlative adjectives whenever we discuss Shakespeare. So that's why I said always we'll use our discussion would be a good combination of superlatives. In the course of a quarter century, Shakespeare wrote some 38 plays. All his course was, he has lived from 1550 to 1616, and in this almost a quarter a century, he wrote 38 plays. And if we take them individually, several of them are among the world's finest written works. Yes, whatever he wrote, it became the most popular book of the world. If we take all his works collectively, they established Shakespeare as the foremost literary talent of his own Elizabethan age, and even more impressively, as a genius whose creative achievements has never been surpassed in any age. He is a creative man, he is innovative, he has introduced such kind of language that in my rest of the lecture I'll be showing you the examples from his writings, and you will be amazed to know that he has contributed to such a great and larger extent the vocabulary items into the vocabulary bank of our English language. He was a man of genius. About him, somebody has very well said that he is not of an age, but of all the ages. That's why I really felt it necessary to share Shakespeare and his works, some of his features, and some of his contributions that he has made in the development and the rise of English language. Yes, let's start with the historical context. In historical context, there were movements in the language, and you would see that importance of the Renaissance, and then Shakespeare roots come from there. There were different movements of the language that were going on, and we have seen that how London dialect has become standardized in our previous lecture, and in this lecture we are going to see that what is the importance of the Renaissance. Actually, Shakespeare belongs to Renaissance age. Renaissance age was the age of rebirth, revival, refreshing of everything, where they were actually renewing the things, renewing the concept. England was prospering. It was very, very well economically, politically, socially, culturally, linguistically. from every perspective they were growing on. And this is from where Shakespeare comes. Actually, this was the place, this was the age where Shakespeare comes in. When we talk about the pronunciation, we see that there are many differences are found in the Middle English period, then early modern English period, and then the Middle English. There are so many things that we have found. But it would have sounded like that the things were getting different from the Old English to the Middle English, and then to the early modern English, etc. We have also looked at the background, and the background is that of the word formation, and we see that there are different things that have worked in collaboration to form the verb. For example, coinage, functional shifts, compounds, fixations, loan, different problems were there. These were the things that have contributed towards the development of the words. Yes, the historical context. While we look at the historical context of the words, we see that 5 to 7 million native English speakers at the end of the 19th century today is used by at least 750 million, perhaps 1 billion, about half as their mother tongue. There are 5 to 7 million native English speakers were found towards the end of the 16th century. This is just a historical background to the development of English. London has become a large city of between 150,000 and 200,000 people. Renaissance added 10,000 and to 12,000 new words to the lexicons. Fine. Following considerable influx of French words in the Middle English period, and then Latin words in the first native English, second borrowed French, and the third borrowed from the Latin. For example, we are looking at the first words that are the words of, we are saying the first one are the words of native English, the second is the borrowed French, and the third are the borrowed Latin. Yes. Native English and borrowed French word is finish, borrowed Latin word is conclude. Yes, the native English word is rise, borrowed French word is mount, and borrowed Latin words is ascend. Goodness is the first native English word, virtue, and then probity. Ask, questions, interrogate. Quite interesting to know. We have been thinking that all these are the synonyms, but we are getting to know that the ask word is actually the native in English, question is borrowed from French, and interrogative is borrowed from Latin. 2. Second and dual. Fire, flame, conflagration. Fear, terror, trepidation. Yes, these different words have been borrowed from French and Latins. Borrowing from Latin reached its climax during Shakespeare's career and leveled off somewhat afterwards. Legal loans were very, very common. What think you, maybe with the warrants of the womanhood and the wickedness of a good conscience, pursue him with the further revenge. Yes, Merry Widows of the Windsor. This is an extract. These are the lines from that book, and as you would see, there were some legal warrant, pursue, witness. All these are the words that are related to legal field of the law, etc. we can say, and that they were again the common loan words. Getting closer to modern English, children living 450 years before Shakespeare's time would have heard and spoken that Shakespeare would have barely been able to understand, whereas we can understand him with less effort. A very, very interesting point to note. Yes, what is this interesting point and very, very important thing? Children who were living 450 years before Shakespeare's time. One is the Shakespeare's time. There are the children who were living before that time, and there are the generations who are living after Shakespeare time. Let's say it's only 500, let's go only 500 years back to Shakespeare's time. We found that perhaps Shakespeare could not understand that word these people spoke 500 years back. And look at this generation, at our generation, that what we are doing, even now we can understand Shakespeare. After, you can count the centuries, after how many centuries? And we can understand him even with the less effort. Yes, Shakespeare's roots. 1564 to 1616, this was the era of Shakespeare. He would have spoken a kind of Midlands English. Stratford lay at the crossroads of the three great regional speech areas of England. He could use them all. Yes, he was actually a good, he would have spoken, as I was saying, do that in this thing, Midland English was a major part in the, it was a major part in the development of English, in the development of the new dialect. And Stratford lay at the crossroads. Stratford, where he actually used to reside, it was at the crossroads of the three great regional speeches areas of England. He could use them all. He was a multilingual person who could speak all the languages that were present and that were spoken in that area. This large vocabulary, 30,000 educated person today has around 15,000. He has a large vocabulary. Look, amazing. He has a large vocabulary of 30,000 words. Even today, educated person today has around 15,000 words. It's not more than that. Amazing. He loved to experiment with the words. These are the reason that I am teaching you Shakespeare today in for language history. He broke rules and played with the language. He broke all the rules, all the set grammatical patterns that were there. He broke them. He gave his own creativity regarding language. Versatility is there in Shakespeare. Shakespeare could write in the shoes of many characters in society. All classes of people in all sorts of situations, political, social, historical. See how versatile he was. He was not a person who has a single footing, who has a single dimension. He was versatile. He could write for the masses. He could write for the upper class. He could write for the middle class. He could write for every kind of situation, whether political, cultural, or social, anything. Irish tish ill done, the work is give over, the trumpets sound the retreat. It was written for Irish people. Look about Welsh. Captain MacMorris, I beseech you now, will you WhatsApp me? Look you a few disputations with you as partly touching on concerning the discipline of war. This is a Welsh touch. Then the Scots touch. It shall be very good. Good faith, good captains have bet, and I shall quit you with good leave, as I may pick occasion, that shall I marry. This is from Henry V. These are different lines that have been taken from different languages, and it shows that Shakespeare was versatile. He could use every kind of language to deal with every kind of situation. The movements in our language. Movements in a language were different movements. For example, first of all, the spelling movement, standardization, the vernacular spellings were standardized. For example, freezing spellings from variable ones. There were lack of dictionaries, grammars, and an academy until the 17th century. After 17th century, many of the dictionaries started coming up. All modern editions of Shakespeare's work, except for ones that preserve archaism for scholars, regularize the spellings of original text to conform to the newer standards. They were actually regularizing the spellings to make it suitable to the newer standards. Grammar was bad grammar, not the same as it is in today. Yes, as I just told you, that Shakespeare is versatile. He's a diversified writer who used to play with the language. He did not work in the set patterns of the language. He gave some new innovative ideas. Variation and the choices everywhere. Shakespeare and Elizabethans were bold and daring in this regard, but were not doing anything fundamentally different that what native speakers were free to do. Yes, when we talk about Elizabethan era, Shakespeare is from that era, and they were bold, they were daring, they were innovative, they were creative. They could have done marvelously in introducing some new things. Style: Renaissance rediscovery of classical literature, the art of rhetoric, long heavily subordinate sentences were there. Okay, punning, that is, we found pun words in Shakespeare's writing. Punning reflects the Renaissance recognition of the slipperiness of the language. Punning, for example, there is I would just write down one line and then you can understand that what is punning. There's a line is from the very world famous drama of Hamlet, and the line is, I am too much in the sun. There is a pun on the word sun. Sun is actually, I'm too much in the sun. A child is talking about that he's too much already in the sun. Everything is bright, everything is quite open, he knows everything about what was going on in the state. But Hamlet is actually talking about his late father and the early hasty marriage of the mother, that I'm too much in the sun. He was already too much in the sun. There is a pun on this word sun. Then there are some other movements in the language that then next is thee, thou, thee, ye, you. Second person pronounced choice if affected by the properness. King Lear uses thee versus you alternately to his daughters, depending on which one he is talking to and how he feels about her. Yes, he talks thee. Thee refers to you. Dost and doth. Archaism, it is actually, these are archaic words, the old words, each different from the form of verb, do, with the specific grammatical meanings. It is being replaced by do and does these days instead of doth and dust. Ado, as there is a very famous proverb by Shakespeare, this is, and the proverb says, much ado about nothing. Much ado about nothing. There are so many things that they are doing about nothing. Multiple negatives are there, still found frequently in Shakespeare, and that no woman has, nor never none shall mistress be of it, save I alone. These are the words uttered by Waller in the 12th Night. There are multiple negatives that were there in his language. Some prepositions: up with which will not put, up with which we will not put. Churchill says, as you like it. These are some of the prepositions. Inkhorn controversy was also there. Yes, the age of the Bible, it was also the age of the Bibles. These were different Bibles that were written by different people, starting from 1525 and ranging to 1611 actually. This is a biblical analogy that I have given about the Bibles, and the faults the 16th century imputed to the speaker, 17th century blamed on the speech itself. 16th century defects in man brought about confused speech. 17th century confused speech brings about defects of man. In Shakespeare, character faults are inadequate speech. Coriolanus is too proud and fails verbally with the people. Lear's communication breaks down. No talking in the storm. Sonnets, Lego's words on Othello, defects in the speaker's corrupt language. Yes, there is actually the biblical analogy is given, and this is these were different actually aspects that you can see are found regarding language. Let's see that what were these. Faults the 16th century imputed to the speaker. It imputed, the faults were allocated to the speaker. 17th century blamed on speech. Firstly, the blame is on speaker. Then in 17th century, blame is on speech. In 16th century, defects in man brought about confused speech. There were some problem. There were some actually defects in the man itself. There were some problems, some speaking problems in the man itself about confused speech. Okay, whereas in 17th century, this confused speech brings about the defects of man. The things started developing. This confused speech, actually, if somebody speaks confusingly, it means that that person is these are the defects of the man that his speech shows, because your communication, your face is the index of what you are doing. In Shakespeare, character faults cause inadequate speech. Yes, this is quite relevant to the point that we discussed above, that in Shakespeare the faults of character, they cause inadequate speech. The character is too much proud and fails verbally with the people. Lear's communication is breaking down, and just this is because of some of the faults that lie inside them. Yes, these are different pronunciations of that were there. It can be Shakespeare, 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 or Shakespeare. There is no single form of national received pronunciation in his day. Yes, there was no single form of the received pronunciation. The important term is received pronunciation. Received pronunciation actually is also known as RP, or the received pronunciation. It is standard pronunciation, standard accent of English. The standard accent of English is known as RP, or the received pronunciation. The pronunciation that we in our country, being Pakistani, we follow and we copy is that of received pronunciation that was used in Britain. There were some regional accents were much more individual. Before this we were just talking that there was no single form of national received pronunciation in his day. We don't find even up till now that one pronunciation has been standardized and has been nominated as the received pronunciation or the standard pronunciation. There are some regional accents were much more individual. We have had 500 years of orthographic and phonetic standardization. Yes, different regional accents were much more individual. Definitely, if there is nothing standardized, it means the things are more individualized. Regional accents were much more individual, and we have 500 years of orthographic and phonetic standardization. Yes, there were almost 500 years, a long history that was coming on. Shakespeare came from an oral society primarily. Publication of his plays was their oral delivery. Great. He himself, being a representative or an ambassador of oral society, he used to have this oral, he was an ambassador of the oral society, and he himself was actually coming from that. So how did he publicize it? he publicized his plays with their oral delivery. The way they were pronounced, the way they were spoken, the way they were staged and presented in the theatres, this was only the publicity of Shakespeare at the time. Very perceptible differences from today, but not as great since the great vowel shift. Yes, in our upcoming lectures we'll be discussing in detail the great vowel shift, and their very perceptible differences are found from today, but they are not as great as the great vowel shift that we see. Yes, there are while talking about the language, we see that there is the nasal sound it is pronounced like in apple. Apple is apple. Father, I want to wash in the water with the Margaret Gardener. Art of walking and talking with Arthur and Martha Martin. It's the sound is sound. This is nasal. Nasal is coming from nasal cavity, and it is apple. It comes from the nasal cavity. It is pronounced that way. The second is the O sound, pronounced as oo. For example, in shove, ov, o sound. And the examples of this sound were this way: mother, brother, doth, want, another, brother, verily much, but with such a brother, heaven above, give us not another, other, or shove. Okay, then the next is O sound, and oo blending is pronounced oo, as in owl, ow, it makes ow. And the example of this are: how now, brown cow, a loose mouse, now in the house doth be down with the sow. A lousy mouse. These are the different examples that were given in Shakespearean language. The oo and e blend, and it was pronounced as ui, like spice, ice, ui, ice, spice. My thigh fly, dot fly, high, sigh, by, and my fly shall be thigh fly, the fly is thine. My the fly that fly high, by my fly shall be thigh fly, the fly is thine, spy is thine. Yes, the next change that he did, the short and bland, and the pronounced like said, said, add, For example, in the words like make the baker bake a cake that I might take. Haste the eight. Yes, these are different words, and beautiful examples are given. These are the changes that were done. The first change, I'll be just giving you a recapitulation of this slide, just to make it clear that you have understood it in a good way. Apple, look at the example. Feather, apple, feather. Margaret, gardener. Oo sound, oo. Much, but, with, such, shove, of, such, brother. The next is house, mouse, brown. The next is ice, I. For example, my, fly, die, fly, my. Okay. Then the next is being pronounced as For example, baker, bake, cake, might, take. These are certain examples, and these are different words that were used in his era with different modifications. Yes, long, a blend. There is a pronounce, and they were pronounced as a, like in a day, a. say, beloved Olay, seems, pleased, Aya, as in day, A, it makes A. He says is sacred. There was ed, and it is pronounced it as an extra full syllable, ed, a complete full syllable. For example, he turned, stopped, and asked, art thou angered? She leaned towards him and void his death, then walked and talked no more. Had he tarried, they might be married. Now he doth be buried. They were killed and trapped by hate, carried away by evil. This is really very different one. We don't pronounce it as a complete extra syllable. Ed, a complete syllable. It's a complete syllable. We don't pronounce it this way these days. And we don't call asked. It is ed, asked, killed. Okay, another major change that was done, it was in this word, and it was the direction that it should be pronounced as an extra full syllable. The next is z sound, and it's sure, as sure. It must be as not be pronounced as sure as zor, zur. As for example, it is z and her, zor, je. It makes je sound. For example, measure, pleasure, treasure, leisure, measure, and pleasure. These are different examples of the je sound that must be pronounced. There were some special words that were introduced. For example, the word surely, it was not surely, it was sorely. William, it was not William, it was Willem. Drake's father, she never dropped the V. He have the patience, and patience was pronounced as patience. Affection as, the word affection as affection. Okay, some other words, the word assure, it was assure, not assure, it is assore, and his wife wants thy pity, a while association, yes, a very one thing to note is that there is not sh sound. Sh sound is not found. All they are pronounced as s, association, patience, affection, perfection, assore. There is no sh sound is not found. This is one thing to remember, that this sh sound is not found in Shakespeare. We are going to look at Hamlet's transcription. That let's look at the language that he has used. This is actually the transcription, and perhaps you won't be able to see. Let's look at the lines. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I! Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit, that from her working all his visage waned, tears in his eyes, distraction in aspects, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing, for Hecuba. What's Hecuba to him, or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? What would he do? Had he the motive and the cure for passion that I have? Yes, these are the lines from one very famous book of Shakespeare, and that the name of the book is Hamlet. This is by Shakespeare, and actually the name of the book is Hamlet. And see what this is actually. Let's see that how he has used it. This is, oh, what a rogue and peasant what I'll be just pronouncing it from here. Actually, this is the transcription is given over here, as this is not a part of your subject, so I will not be emphasizing a lot on this, yet it is very very important in the history, because this is concerned with the phonetics and phonology. If we know that how to read the sounds, definitely we'll be able to differentiate between the sounds that were there earlier and that are there here. Yes. Oh, how your rogue and peasant slave am I. Is not that monstrous that this player here? Yes, just try to find out the words that are quite different. But rogue and pleasant slave am I, is the monster this player here, but not in fiction remove passion, could force his soul to the conceit, visage waned in aspect. These are a few of the words that we have just found. Otherwise the rest of the language we can quite easily understand. So that's why it was earlier it was said that that perhaps the people who have lived 500 years before Shakespeare, they were not able to understand Shakespeare, but now living again after 500 to 600 years of Shakespeare, we can understand him, we can read him with more effort, with the very very less effort than others. Os how a rogue and pleasant slave am I. Is it not monstrous that this player here, this is actually the original lines, this is the actual original language. Let's see how is it. Oh how a rogue and peasant slave am I. This is am and I. Is it not monstrous? Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in your dream have passed on, could force his soul so to his own conceit, that from his working all his wisdom won, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspects, a broken voice and his whole function shooting, with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing. For Hecuba, who is Hecuba to him, or he to her, that he should weep for her? How would he do, had he the motive and the cue for passion that I have, This is what actually the original language is. The previous one that we looked is a translation. This is one that was originally written, and it was originally spoken when this play was staged. There's a person, John Barrett, he reads from Henry V, and about look at different lines. I am going to read it out from Shakespeare. There's a chorus. Actually, in Shakespeare's play, chorus is very very much important. Chorus is a group of the people, or the band of the singers who sing and dance when the play starts, or even sometimes in the play and after the play. This was perhaps to grab the attention of the audiences towards his play. The chorus is singing the lines in this way, that now entertain conjecture of a time when creeping murmur and the pouring dark fills the wide vessels of the universe. From camp to camp through the foul womb of night, the hum of either army still sounds, that the fixed sentinels almost receive the secret whispers of each other's watch. Yes, This is a chorus where different band of singers are speaking, and perhaps even at this stage we are not aware of so many of the words that Shakespeare used at that time. It is earlier also said that Shakespeare actually had large bank of vocabulary items. He had 30,000, it has 3,000 words, whereas a normal intellectual person would have maximum 2,000. So he was a genius, he was a born genius. Yes. Then there are some other sonnets that are given at the following link. You can go and you can see. Then there are actually Henry 4 part 1, Falstaff tells Hall seemingly inexplicably that if reasons were plentiful as blackberries, I would give no man a reason of compulsion. This is a pun here, but the modern audience would be hard pressed to notice it unless reasons were pronounced in the Elizabethan manner. Yes, actually there is one word. Look, this is the reason. We are saying, as we were saying, that in Shakespeare's writing you would find a lot of puns. Puns is actually a kind of taunt where one word is referring to different kinds of meanings, double meanings. There is a pun here, but the modern audience would be hard pressed to notice it. No one notices that yes, that there is a pun that is used on the word reason. Why? Because the thing is that the modern audiences are not aware of the pronunciation of Elizabethan era. They don't know his pronunciation of that time, and when they are going to pronounce this like this, like the time like this that I am doing right now, it's reason, it means that it makes no sense. Reason for them was pronounced in a different way, and then it had its different meanings in different ways. Reason was pronounced in the Elizabethan manner, which would sound like something like raising. It sounds like if raisin, it's raisin. It was not reason, as I am saying right now, or as we call it in the modern English. The pun these becomes obvious and line makes much more sense. In Julius Caesar, Cassius puns on Rome and room, and again the words were pronounced alike, Rome and room. Not one is Rome, not the other is Rome, because it's again a pun, and these are pronounced in the same way. It's either room, the both are room and room, or the both are Rome and Rome. So there is a pun in that sense. Other lost puns were there. Just as Gaunt says, call it a travel that thou talkest for pleasure. It used to sound like travel, travail, it's travail. It used to, the word travel has a sound like travail. Then Festus says, let her hang me. He that is well hanged in the world needs to fear no colors. It used to sound like collars. Only yes, because we are actually coming to the point that the similarities were there. That's why we call it a pun. But if we are not going to identify the similarities, if we are not going to have any idea about the pronunciation, so definitely we are not going to see the differences. Yes, Seward says, had I as many sons as I have hairs, I would not advise them to fairer death. At hair, it used to sound like hairs. Hairs and hair, hair and hair, both used to be same. Yes, then a bit of word formation, that how Shakespeare was able to have such a large vocabulary bank for himself, and how he has coined a different, he has formed different words. Let's look at the first thing, that is the coinage. Functional shift was there, compounds were there, fixations were there, loans were there, and then different problems were there. Coinage. Shakespeare invented totally new words. Great. Perhaps this is the reason that he had a large number of vocabulary. Otherwise, to know for vocabulary of a very intellectual person can have maximum of 2000 words, but he had more than that. So this is just because of the coinage. He used to coin, he used to give new meanings to the new words. Single greatest inventor of the English language. He is, yes, this is actually the reason for discussing Shakespeare, that he is a single greatest inventor of English language. He himself has added so many of the words in English language. He himself has been the such a great inventor of the world, that we can call him, yes, he is actually a person to be discussed. He estimates of his contribution range from 800 to more than 3000. A great contribution that he has made in the English vocabulary items. Easier for words to enter a language when writing exists. So it was quite easy, but as we have discussed, that he was actually from the oral tradition. He was from the orality era. So perhaps most of the things were not found in a written record. He did not use often archaisms. Archaic language means the old languages are not most of the time used. He was daring, yes. Look at the vocabulary that he has coined. Academy, accused, addiction, advertising, amazement, arouse, assassination, backing, bandit, bedroom, beast, besmirch, birthplace, blanket, blood-stained, barefaced, blushing, butt, bump, buzzer, caked, catered, champion, circumstantial, cold-blooded, compromise, courtship, countless, critic, dauntless, dawn, deafening, discontent, disheartened, drugged, dwindle, epileptic, equivocal, elbow, excitement, exposure, eyeball, fashionable, fixture, flawed, frugal, generous, gloomy, gossip, green-eyed gust, hint, hobnob, harried, impede, impartial, invulnerable, jaded label, lackluster, laughable, his lonely, lower, luggage, lustrous, madcap, majestic, marketable, metamorphise, mimic, monumental, moonbeam, mountaineer, negotiate, noiseless, obscene, obsequiously, ode, Olympian, outbreak, pandas, patent, permeated, puking, radiance, rant, remorselessly, savagery, scuffle, secure, skim milk, again coming from Shakespeare, great, good to know. Submerge, submit, swagger, torture, tranquil, undress, unreal, verite, vaulting, worthless, zany. Look, the huge vocabulary. It seems as if perhaps the core of English has come from Shakespeare. He has contributed so many words, and if these are all the words that he coined, what could be a more genius than this person who has coined such a great range of vocabulary items, and he has contributed it in the English. Yes, there were some functional shifts see that as distinctive function of the English language is, for example, he used to describe all these things. Let's start with the one that is there. Yes, the first one is this: adverb and the verb. They from their own misdeeds askance their eyes. He said that adverbs are means the function of adverb to verb, they can be shifted. The functions of Adverb and the nouns can also get shifted. For example, in King Lear, thou losest hair, a better way to find. Losest hair and where are the adverbs and that have been used before noun. Yes, and then adjectives, and we're talking about this adjectives and verb. Which you should save my going. My going is a verb, and it adjective is coming before. Safe is coming before the verb. Body part is coming before verb. But I will beard him. Yes, verb is coming before noun. For example, achievement is a command, ungained, beseech. Beautiful. Achievement is a command. Achievement is a verb. It is coming before noun. Then verb comes before adjective. Nor dignifies and impair thought with the breath. Nor dignifies and impair thought with the breath. Then comes numeral verb. Numeral, it comes before the verb. What man? Thirds his own worth. Thirds is, it is, the verb is used in the sense of numerals. Thirds. Pronounce before the nouns. The chaise of Italy. Pronounce the chaise of Italy. Okay. Nouns instead of adjectives. Salt, Cleopatra. Directly, Cleopatra, there was a noun. It has been called a direct noun instead of saying adjective. Salt, Cleopatra. Nouns instead of saying it were well-moused line. These are different functional shifts that are found in Shakespeare. Then some compounds. Found mostly in Shakespeare's earlier plays. These are found. For example, examples are rat-catcher, fiery-footed, blood-stained, high-reaching, ill-erected, star-crossed, hot-bloods, widowmaker, helter-skelter, hurly-burly. These are different words that were found in very, very early plays of Shakespeare, perhaps not in the later plays of Shakespeare. Affixation. Forming new words by adding affixes to the root words. What he did? He formed new words. How? By adding affixes to the root words. But he started adding a few affixes to the new words. Not like Old English, where no part of the two words in compound were lost, borrowing from French and made this more difficult. For example, the words like dislike, employer, intermingle, resound, surname, undervalue. Dislike is a word that is a compound word, a combination of dis and like. Like, we can say he started adding the words to the root. Dislike is added as a root of dis is added as a root to the like. No less than 93 first instances of words beginning with un. In Hamlet alone, we see there are so many instances. Unannulled, unbettered, uncharged, ineffectual, unfallowed, unfortified, ungurrant, ungartered, unhand, unhouse, unhouseled, unimproved, unknowing, unmastered, unnerved, unpacked, unpolluted, unprevailing, unproportioned, unclaimed, unreclaimed, unrighteous, unshaped, unshifted, unsineweed, unsmushed, unwrung, unforced, ungalled, unnelled, unschooled, unyoke. He formed most of the words even just by using un, even before just in the initial part of the sentence. Some prefixes that he added: be, this, and, in, etc. Then he also added some suffixes. For example, able, age, el, ens, ant, ed, est, ism, and ist. Some Latin loans at a peak during Shakespeare's career were at a peak. For example, Shakespeare used Latin words with a line where they coincide with heavy stresses and achieve maximum emphasis. For example, there is a line in Hamlet, when he himself might his quietus make with the bare bodkin. And what was he, forsooth, a great arithmetician? The emphasis on is that coincide with the heavy stress and achieve maximum emphasis. The stress would be heavy and it would be achieving maximum emphasis. For example, when he himself might his quietus make with the bare bodkin. And what was he, forsooth. These are heavy stresses where we are putting force on some words, often accompanied by synonymous or clues to meaning of new words. The examples are largely in portly size. Okay, some other examples are curious, noted, yes, viewest. So the focus is on often accompanied by synonymous or clues to meaning of new words. Some synonymous words were introduced and they were accompanied by the meanings of the words that used to come close, especially in the histories connection with the textual history. For example, the words like wanderer, vulgar, ordinary, and the list moves on. These are some of the Latin loans that were there. Now these are a few more examples from Shakespeare. These are a great list of idioms that were introduced by Shakespeare in English. For example, let me go through one or two idioms. All our yesterdays, as good luck would have it. These were different. Murders will out, stony hearted, sweets to the sweets from Hamlet, there is a rub, this mortal coil from Hamlet, and then some more. Yes. While we come towards the first recorded usage, we see there is a mixing senses or meanings of the words. There is functional shifts. There are conservative figures of the words. Contribution ranging from 800 to 1700, and it is still very, very huge. There were many lexemes that were introduced, and there is archaism that is also found, some obsolete words that were there. These were some of the problems of the word attribution. Yes. Some other problems that were found with the Shakespearean language was that, do we count words that already existed, that is used in a new sense? Perhaps not. We cannot count the words. These are perhaps a lot of large or not countable. Do we count foreign words? Would be hard. Onomatopic words. Onomatopic words are the words that have some nasal sounds. Smash, clash, splash. The words like that are the onomatopic sounds. What do the players have to say about language? One of the first to poke fun at the idea that every letter should be pronounced in the words. It was another interesting thing, that it was really very funny to pronounce something, every letter in the words. For example, I abhor such phonetism, such records of orthography as to speak doubts and sign without B. When he says about when he says doubt, that, when he should pronounce that. Yes, these are different pronunciation. This is again that they said that it would be very foolish idea to leave a few words and then pronounce the rest of the words. For example, no, in no, K-N-O-W, we don't pronounce K and we say no. There are some, I have also written down a few of fun quotes by Shakespeare. By English is gloriously impure, Anthony Burgess says. A living language is like a man suffering insensately from small hemorrhages, and what it needs above all else is constant transaction of new blood from other tongues. The day the gates go up, the day it begins to die. Yes. So with this we come to the end of our exposure to Shakespeare as the greatest linguist, not only a literary person, as a greatest, not only a greatest dramatist of the world, but also a greatest linguist of the world. I'll just with this today, I'll just give you a quick recapitulation of what we have done regarding Shakespeare today. We started our discussion with a brief introduction to Shakespeare. We have traced that he was coming from which origins, from the origin of Renaissance and the Elizabethan era. He was actually a man who was very strong, not only in his literary backgrounds, he was coming from the oral culture. What he did, he actually he broke all the rules. He was very much creative, innovative. He broke all the rules, and he started using and coining many words. And we have also throughout in our lecture today, we have seen that how a lot of things have made contribution towards towards the vocabulary bank of English. Shakespeare himself has given such a range of vocabulary to the English that it is really quite amazing. It is quite enlightening for us to see that how he was in a habit of forming so many words, how he was in a habit of using compound words, how he was in a habit of introducing the words by the process of affixing, the things that we discussed earlier as well. So with this we'll end it up here, and in the next lecture we'll move on to the onto the next step of our history. And I hope that today's talk was useful for you, and with this I will end, and till the next lecture, take very good care of yourself, and we'll be back. And thank you very much. Okay, take care, and Allah Hafiz.